I was 7 when he first touched me. He was not a stranger. He was not a monster from the woods. He was someone I loved. Someone my mother trusted. Someone who sat at our table every Sunday and wiped his mouth with the same cloth he used to wipe mine. He was my uncle. Not by blood, my father's best friend. But I called him uncle because that's what children do. We give people names before we understand what they mean, before we understand what they're capable of. I remember the first time like a photograph burned into the back of my eyes. The summer heat, the curtains drawn, the hum of the fan, my mother in the kitchen, his hand on my shoulder, and the way the world suddenly went very, very quiet. I didn't know what it was, not then. I only knew it felt wrong, that it made me want to crawl out of my own skin, that my heart beat so loud I thought he might hear it, but I didn't scream. I didn't run. I didn't even move, because I was 7. And he smiled the whole time. Later, he gave me a piece of candy and told me not to tell. Said it was our little secret. Said my mother wouldn't understand, that she'd be angry, that I'd ruin everything. So I said nothing. I buried it. I folded that day into a corner of my mind and locked it away. But he came back, again, and again, and again, until I no longer knew where I ended and his shadow began. My body stopped feeling like mine. It became something I carried, something I avoided, something I blamed, and no one noticed. Or maybe they did. Maybe they just looked away, because I changed. Of course I changed. I grew quiet, angry, skittish. I flinched when someone touched me. I refused to sit in laps. I stopped looking people in the eye. My mother scolded me for being rude. My teacher asked if everything was all right at home. I said yes. Because what else could I say? That someone they loved was eating me alive from the inside out? That I was choking on a secret no one had the courage to ask about? Years passed. He moved away eventually, got married, had children of his own. The last time I saw him, he kissed my cheek and told me how pretty I'd become. I was 14. I wanted to claw my skin off, but I smiled. Because that's what girls are taught to do. Smile, stay quiet, don't make trouble. And I was good at it. So good, in fact, that I fooled even myself for a while. Convinced myself it hadn't been that bad, that other girls had it worse, that maybe it had been my fault. That word fault clung to me like smoke. It took decades to shake it. Even now, I sometimes wake up in the dark, certain that he's standing in the doorway again, that I'm 7 again, that I'll never be clean. But I speak now. I speak because silence nearly killed me. I speak because there is a little girl out there right now, swallowing her scream the way I did, thinking no one will believe her. I speak for her, because no one spoke for me. I carried it through my teenage years like a stone tied to my ribs. I dated boys who didn't ask questions. I let them touch me in ways I didn't want, because saying no felt louder than silence. I dissociated. I drifted. I built a version of myself that could smile through anything, and I lived inside her like a stranger. At 18, I left home. I didn't tell anyone why. I told them I got a scholarship, that I wanted a new start. And it was true, just not the whole truth. I thought if I changed cities, changed names, changed everything about me, I could leave him behind. I could leave her behind, the girl who never said a word, who kept the secret so well it nearly swallowed her. But secrets don't stay buried. They bleed into your choices, into your voice, into your body. I married young, too young, to a man who didn't hit me, but didn't see me either. I thought that was enough. I thought invisibility meant safety. I gave him children. I gave him the best parts of me I had left. And still, I never told him. Not even once. Because how do you say it out loud? How do you explain that your body flinches when it remembers things before you do? How do you explain the nightmares? The way you lock the bathroom door even when you're alone? The way your heart races when a man raises his voice? Not at you, not even in anger, but just loud enough to crack the silence? You don't. You swallow it. You keep setting the table. You keep folding the laundry. You keep smiling in photos. Until one day, something cracks. For me, it was my daughter. She came home from school one afternoon, slammed the door, and sat on the floor of the kitchen shaking. I asked her what was wrong, and she wouldn't speak. She just cried. Deep, silent sobs, the kind that come from someplace deeper than words. I knew that sound. I knew it better than my own voice. And something inside me shattered. I sat down next to her. I didn't ask questions. I just said, "Me too." And that was the beginning. Not of healing. Healing is not a line you cross. It's a landscape you learn to live inside. It was the beginning of truth, of naming things, of not flinching when I said the word rape, of not protecting the man who ruined me, just because he was loved by people I loved, of writing his name down, saying it out loud, of forgiving the girl I was, who didn't run, who didn't scream, who didn't fight, because she was 7, because she survived, and because now she is not alone. I started therapy in my 60s. Most women don't, especially not women like me, raised to believe that pain is private, that strength is silence, that whatever happens behind closed doors stays there. But I was tired of silence, tired of pretending the past was just a dream I'd woken from. The first time I said his name in that small white room, my voice cracked. I thought it would kill me. It didn't. It steadied. And the second time I said it, I didn't cry. He died years ago. I found out by accident. His name, in a short obituary, buried between wedding announcements and estate notices. A line about a loving father, a generous husband, a man of the community. No mention of me. No mention of what he took. I didn't go to the funeral. I didn't light a candle. I didn't spit on his grave. I wrote his name on a scrap of paper, folded it twice, and buried it under a lilac bush in my garden. Not for him, for her, for the girl I once was. That was the day I began to feel clean. Not healed, clean, like I had finally taken off the coat of someone else's crime. There are days I still wake with the weight of it in my chest. There are days I cannot bear to look in the mirror, but most days I speak, to groups, to young girls, to women older than me who never told a soul. I sit in circles of folded chairs and flickering lights, and I say, "He did this. It wasn't your fault. You are not alone." And I mean it, because I survived. And now I am the voice I never had. Some nights I lie in bed with the window cracked open, listening to the wind move through the trees. It sounds like breathing, like the world itself is exhaling, slowly, endlessly, carrying with it all the things we were never allowed to say. Sometimes I imagine the girl I was sitting at the foot of my bed, swinging her legs, watching me. She doesn't look afraid anymore. She just looks tired. I talk to her, softly, like you would a child who's seen too much too soon. I tell her she did the best she could, that it wasn't her fault, that she didn't need to be braver or louder or smarter, that surviving was enough. I think she believes me now. At least, I hope she does. I write letters, even though I never send them. To the mothers who didn't ask questions, to the fathers who stayed silent, to the boys who became men who now say, "I didn't know," and expect that to be enough. to the girls who still think it was something they did. I write and write and write until my hands ache, until the page blurs, until the pain feels less sharp and more like a shadow I've learned to live beside. Because telling the truth doesn't undo what happened, but it unhooks it from your spine. And that, I've learned, is something like freedom. I have 3 granddaughters now. They run barefoot through the yard, scream when they laugh, cry when they're angry. No one shushes them. No one tells them to smile when they don't want to. No one makes them hug people they don't trust. They are loud, fierce, whole. Sometimes I watch them from the kitchen window and my chest aches with something I can't name. Not sadness, not even grief, a kind of awe. Because they are growing up in a world I never thought would be possible. A world where girls fight back, where stories are believed, where silence is not loyalty but prison. And they have the key. They don't know my full story yet. One day I will tell them. Not all the details, never all the details, but enough. Enough to show them that survival is not shame, that healing is not weakness, that there is power in speaking, even when your voice shakes, especially then. When they're old enough, I'll sit them down beneath the lilac tree. The same place I buried his name, the same place I buried my silence. I'll let the wind carry my words the way it once carried my screams, unheard. I won't cry. Not for him. Not anymore. I'll look them in the eyes and say, "You come from a long line of women who were told to stay quiet, and I broke that line." They might not understand it right away. They're still so full of life, so untouched by the weight of secrets. But one day, when someone tries to shrink them, to shame them, to silence them, they'll remember. They'll remember their grandmother didn't die with her truth still caged inside her chest. They'll remember the stories, the notebooks, the circle of women in folding chairs who refused to stay broken, the names said aloud, the dirt beneath their fingernails. They'll know that healing isn't pretty, isn't clean. It's messy, loud, relentless. It takes everything from you and gives you back pieces of yourself you thought were gone forever. They'll know that sometimes the strongest thing a girl can do is speak, even if her voice shakes, even if her story makes people uncomfortable, especially then. I don't need a legacy carved in stone. I don't need a plaque or a statue or a eulogy. I just want them to grow up knowing their voice matters, that their body belongs to them, that no one has the right to rewrite their story. I want them to walk through the world with their heads high and their hearts unafraid, knowing that silence was never strength, and that they come from a woman who faced the dark and didn't flinch. When I die, don't bury me with flowers. Plant something. Something that grows wild, something with thorns, something that refuses to bend. Let it reach for the sky in defiance. Let it remind every girl who walks past that something once rooted in silence can rise, strong and untamed. I've already written my letter. It's tucked into a box beneath the bed, next to the last notebook. It doesn't have confessions, no names, just truth, and a single request. Don't let them forget me as someone who suffered. Let them remember me as someone who spoke. Because suffering is not what defines us. Speaking does. Breaking does. Healing does. The first time I said what happened to me out loud, I thought I'd shatter. I thought I'd become unrecognizable, but the opposite happened. I became more myself than I'd ever been. That's what truth does. It burns away everything that isn't yours. And what's left, what's really left, isn't broken. It's sacred. I don't know how many girls I've helped. I don't keep count. I don't need to. I just keep showing up, one room after another, one trembling voice at a time. I listen. I nod. I say, I believe you, and I mean it. And sometimes that's enough. Sometimes, for the first time in their lives, they believe it too. That they are not ruined, that they are not dirty, that they are still here. Some of them send me letters years later. One wrote, "You saved my life." But I didn't. She saved her own. All I did was tell the truth, loud enough for her to hear her own voice again. And that is all I ever wanted. To make enough noise that no one like me ever has to be quiet again. There's a photo on my wall, black and white, faded at the corners, taken long before the bruises, before the silence, before I even knew what fear was. It's me and my sister sitting on the steps of our old house, barefoot and laughing. I'm holding a ragged doll. She has a dandelion crown in her hair. The light caught us mid-laughter, mid-breath, mid-childhood. That girl still lives inside me. She survived what came after. She held the secret. She wore the weight. She stayed. And now, after all these years, I finally see her again. Not in mirrors, not in nightmares, but in the reflection of who I've become. She's proud of me. I know it, because I gave her back her voice. I think of all the girls who still live like I once did, who walk through the world with shoulders tight and hands clenched and a scream locked behind their teeth, who smile in pictures, who pass their rapist in the hallway, who eat dinner with him, who are told to be grateful, to be silent, to be good. I want to tell them, you are not what he did to you. You are what you do with it, with the rage, with the sorrow, with the truth. If you write, write. If you fight, fight. If you run, run. If you burn it all down and start again, do it. There's no correct way to survive. There is only your way. Mine was slow. I did not scream. I did not run. I grew roots, deep ones. And when I bloomed again, it was not gentle. It was wildfire. And now the world burns a little brighter because of it. I am not afraid to die. Because I know that when I'm gone, the seeds I planted will remain. In every girl who speaks. In every woman who rises. In every truth that no longer hides behind a locked door. We are not their shame. We are their reckoning. Ich verstehe. Hier ist der nächste Abschnitt der Geschichte. In möglichst großer, zusammenhängender Textlänge. There are nights I lie awake and think about the women who never made it this far. The ones who carried their pain quietly until it turned into illness, into bitterness, into silence so deep no one could reach them. Women who folded their stories into their pillowcases, who kept the screams inside, pressed between clean sheets and Sunday dresses, who showed up to every holiday with a pie in hand and a war behind their eyes, who were praised for their strength when really all they had was endurance, not because they wanted to be brave, but because they were given no other choice. I carry them with me, in my bones, in my breath, in the way I never let a girl's trembling voice go unheard, in the way I look a man in the eye when he tries to explain away her fear. I have become everything I once needed, not loud, not angry, just unmovable. And I've learned something that took me most of my life to understand. Healing is not a return. You don't go back to who you were. You build someone new out of what was left behind. For a long time, I thought I was ruined. Not because he told me so, he never had to. The world told me. With its silence, with its shame, with its rules about what girls are allowed to carry and what they must bury. I thought I was too broken to be loved, too damaged to be soft, too used to ever feel whole again. And I lived like that. Years and years of half-breaths and fake smiles and relationships I sabotaged before they could see too far inside. I thought if I was always the one to leave first, I wouldn't have to feel what it meant to be left. But then something strange happened. I stopped being afraid of the truth. I started speaking it in small pieces. At first, just to myself, then to the therapist who didn't flinch, then to the woman in the grocery store whose hands shook like mine, then to a room full of strangers who nodded before I finished my first sentence. And each time I spoke, I didn't shatter. I opened. Something in me softened, and the more I told, the less power it had over me. It didn't erase what happened. It didn't make it right, but it made me real again, made me present in my body, in my life, in the world. Now, when I wake in the middle of the night and feel that familiar weight on my chest, I don't push it away. I sit with it. I say, I see you. I remember. But I am still here. Because that's the miracle no one talks about. Not just that we survive, but that we stay. That we choose to live in the same body where the pain happened. That we carry it gently, fiercely, honestly, and still find ways to laugh, to love, to raise children and plants in hell when we have to. That we become homes for others when no one was home for us. And yes, there are days I still ache, still falter, still flinch when a door closes too loudly. But then I see my granddaughter sleeping on the couch, one arm thrown over her face like a shield she no longer needs. And I think, she will never have to smile through pain. She will never have to be polite to her abuser. She will never learn that silence is safer than truth. Because I broke that cycle, I did. With blood and tears and stories scratched into the dark, I broke it. And I will never stop speaking. Not even with my last breath. Because somewhere out there, a girl is listening and learning that she can too. Sometimes I wonder what my life would have been if he hadn't touched me. If the man who was supposed to be family had kept his hands to himself. If my body had remained mine from the beginning, who would I have become? Would I have laughed louder? Would I have trusted love when it first knocked? Would I have danced without checking who was watching? I don't know. And I never will. That is the cruelest theft. Not just the moment itself, not just the pain, but all the lives I might have lived if that moment had never happened. All the versions of myself that never got the chance to grow. But I've stopped mourning them. Not because they didn't matter, but because the woman I became, this woman, is enough. She is tired, yes. Her knees ache when it rains. Her hands are soft from time and work and loss. But her back is straight, her voice steady, her story loud, and she is not ashamed. I have learned to love her, not despite what she lived through, but because of it, because she chose not to disappear. Because every time the world tried to crush her, she took her broken pieces and built something stronger. You want to know what strength looks like? It looks like sitting in a doctor's office and saying, "I was raped," without lowering your voice. It looks like holding your child and promising them they will never know that kind of pain, and meaning it with every atom in your body. It looks like standing in a courtroom while a man calls you a liar and still telling the truth. It looks like growing old in the same skin that once betrayed you and calling it home. It looks like this. It looks like me. And I'm not done yet. There are still girls being told to stay quiet. Still mothers teaching their daughters to be small. Still fathers turning their faces away when the truth sits down at the dinner table. Still boys being broken by men and told they should be grateful it wasn't worse. And as long as that's true, I will speak. I will write. I will listen when others are too afraid to. I will not be gentle when rage is what's needed. I will not soften a story just to make it easier to hear. Because what happened to me was not easy, and no one protected me. But I can protect them now. Not with walls or weapons, with truth. With the kind of truth that burns through silence like fire through dry fields. Let it burn. Let it reach every corner where a girl sits trembling, thinking it's her fault. Let it wrap around her and say, "You are not alone. You were never alone. We've been waiting for you." I waited my whole life for someone to say that to me. And now, I say it to every girl who needs it. Even if I never hear her name. Even if she never speaks mine. Even if the only thing I leave behind is a voice echoing into the dark, still whispering, "You survived. You matter. You're free." There's something sacred about growing old in a body that was once violated, something defiant, something holy. For so long, I believed I would never feel safe in my own skin. That my body was a battlefield, a ruin, a place where something terrible had happened and nothing good could ever grow again. I avoided mirrors. I hated being touched. I flinched at kindness because I thought it always came with a price. But slowly, so slowly, I reclaimed it. Not with creams or makeup or diets. Not by pretending it hadn't happened. I reclaimed my body by staying in it. By breathing through the panic. By holding my shaking hands and saying, "You belong to me?" By letting my granddaughter braid my hair and laughing when she said I looked like a queen. By dancing in my living room when no one was watching. By planting flowers in the spring and feeling the dirt under my nails and knowing I am still alive. I still carry him. Not in my thoughts. I don't think of him. He doesn't deserve space in my mind, but in my healing. In every scar I turned into softness. In every truth I refused to swallow. He is the shadow that sharpened my light. And I am not afraid of him anymore. There are days when women write to me and they say, "I wish I were as strong as you." And I tell them, I wasn't strong when it happened. I wasn't strong when I hid it. I wasn't strong when I broke down in the middle of the supermarket because a stranger's cologne smelled like him. Strength didn't come like a thunderclap. It came like a whisper. It came in the moment I told the truth and my world didn't end. It came in the moment I looked in the mirror and didn't look away. It came in the moment I saw my daughter cry and I held her without saying, "You'll be okay." Because sometimes we just need someone to hold the pain with us. That is strength. To stay, to hold, to carry what others won't name, to breathe when it hurts, to speak when it terrifies you, to exist fully, loudly, after someone tried to erase you. I never got justice, not the kind the courts promise, but I did get something better. I got to live, not just survive, live, laugh, write, cry, love, be loved, grow old, grow free. And now, when the sun sets and the house grows quiet, I sit in my chair, hands folded in my lap, and I think he may have stolen my childhood, but I took back my life, and in the end, I won. I think a lot about legacy these days, not the kind written in history books or carved into gravestones, not money, not possessions, not even my name. That will fade. Everything fades. But stories, that's different. Stories don't need to be remembered to survive. They echo. They pass from hand to hand, breath to breath, tucked between lullabies and warnings, between journal pages and late-night phone calls. They survive in the way a mother touches her child, in the way a girl looks at a boy who walks too close, in the silence that is finally broken. My legacy isn't what I built, it's what I broke. I broke the silence. I broke the lie that said I was to blame. I broke the myth that pain must be hidden, that survival is shameful, that girls are born to be devoured and never to speak of it. And through those cracks, something beautiful grew. My daughter once asked me why I never pressed charges. She was angry on my behalf, shaking, furious. "You should have done something," she said. "You should have made them pay." And maybe I should have, but I was 17 when he left town. The people who could have helped chose not to. The system wasn't made for girls like me. Not back then. Maybe not even now, so no. I didn't put him in prison. But I did something else. I made sure his name wasn't safe in the mouths of women. I made sure his story ended, not with pride, but with exposure. I turned his secret into my truth. And every time another woman found the courage to say, "That happened to me too," I felt it, the scales tipping, the ground shifting, the power returning to the hands it was stolen from. And now, here I am, old, wrinkled, unapologetic. I wear my history like armor now. Not because it doesn't hurt, but because it does. And I carry it anyway. Because pain carried in silence is shame. But pain carried in truth is testimony. And my life, this bruised, beautiful, loud life, is the proof that a girl can be broken, silenced, hurt in ways she didn't have words for. And still grow up to be someone who names every wound out loud. So when I go, do not mourn me quietly. Light candles, tell stories, say the hard parts first. And if they ask what I was, tell them I was not soft. Tell them I was not clean. Tell them I was not obedient. Tell them I was the first in the family to stop pretending. The first in the family to stop pretending that is what I want to be remembered for. Because pretending ran through our blood like inheritance. Passed down from mother to daughter, aunt to niece, grandmother to granddaughter. Pretend you didn't hear him. Pretend you misunderstood. Pretend you were mistaken. Pretend it was your fault. Pretend it never happened. Keep your voice low. Keep your legs crossed. Keep your eyes down. Keep the family together. I was raised on that silence, fed with it, dressed in it. I learned to smile even when it split me open. Learned to serve food to men who had looked at me too long. Learned to be grateful for attention I never asked for. Learned to confuse survival with obedience. My mother carried her own stories. I could see it in the way her hands trembled when she touched my hair, in the way she never sat near certain men at church, in the way her face darkened when I cried for no reason. I think, maybe, she knew. Not the details, but enough. She never asked, and I never told. Pretending was her language, and I was fluent. But even the best liars run out of air eventually. Even the deepest denial will crack if you press hard enough. I pressed. I asked questions. I stopped hiding. I made people uncomfortable. I told the truth. And when they told me to lower my voice, I raised it. That is how it started. Not with justice, not with revenge, but with refusal. I refused to be quiet. Refused to protect the man who hurt me. Refused to smile at family gatherings. Refused to carry shame that was never mine. Refused to let my daughters think pain was a woman's birthright. It was not easy. Nothing worth doing ever is. I lost people, friends, relatives. There were those who called me dramatic, bitter, crazy. Those who said I was tarnishing the family name. But I kept going. Because I'd rather be called a liar by those who want silence than be called a traitor by the girl I used to be. She, 7 years old, knees bruised, eyes too old for her face. She is the only one I answer to now, and when I speak for her. Every time I tell my story, she listens. Every time another woman finds her voice, she grows a little taller inside me. Sometimes I wonder what she would think of me now. An old woman with a bad hip and a loud mouth. A woman who's written down every detail. Who's sat on panels. Who's answered the hard questions in rooms full of people who couldn't meet her gaze. Who's comforted strangers through bathroom stalls and courtroom steps and whisper chains passed down in waiting rooms. I think she'd be proud. Not because I'm healed. Healing is a path with no end, but because I walked it, because I never stopped walking it, and because I cleared a little more of the way for the ones behind me. You want to know what I regret? That I didn't start sooner, that I didn't scream the first time, that I let them convince me it was safer to be silent, that I spent so many years blaming myself. But those regrets no longer rule me. They sit beside me now, quiet, forgiven. I give talks now when my legs let me. I sit in folding chairs and look into the eyes of girls with shaking hands and voices like broken glass. And I tell them, you are not crazy, you are not dirty, you are not dramatic, you are a survivor. And the moment they believe me, even for 1 second, is the moment everything changes. Because survival isn't just breathing, it's remembering, it's saying the name, it's holding the rage in your chest and turning it into a weapon of truth. It's standing in the ashes of everything they tried to bury and saying, I am still here, and I am still here. And every day that I remain, I speak, because I know now my story is not mine alone. It belongs to every girl who was told to hush. Every woman who bled behind closed doors and wore long sleeves in the summer. Every child who flinched at the sound of a key turning in the lock. My story is stitched from the same thread as theirs. Woven from silence, cut with fear, embroidered with shame. But I've unpicked every stitch. And in its place, I've sown truth. Truth is messy, ugly, raw. It doesn't make people comfortable. It doesn't sit politely in living rooms or pass easily at dinner tables. It makes people shift in their seats. It breaks the illusion. It tears the family photo in half. But it is real. And I would rather live in the ruins of a real story than inside a perfect lie. When I started speaking, I expected resistance. I didn't expect the flood. Women I had known my whole life began to tell me their secrets. Whispers in kitchens, eyes cast downward in hallways. A trembling touch on the arm, followed by, me too. It was everywhere. The pain wasn't rare. It was routine. And that's what broke me all over again. Not just what happened to me, but what happened to all of us. The sheer number, the scale, the fact that we all thought we were alone. That's what silence does. It isolates. It convinces you that you are the problem, that your memory is flawed, that you're just too sensitive, too emotional, too much, that maybe it wasn't that bad, that maybe he didn't mean it, that maybe you misunderstood. But the truth? The truth is like a candle lit in a cave. One flame at a time, and suddenly you realize you're not alone. You never were. Now, when I speak, I don't shake. I speak like a woman who has nothing left to lose and everything to give. I tell them about the long nights, the panic attacks, the years I avoided intimacy, the shame that clung to my skin like a second body. I tell them about the therapy, the journals, the days I could barely stand, the ones I stood anyway. I tell them about the rage, and they listen. Because rage is not unholy. It's a language. one we were never taught to speak. But once you learn it, it frees you. I want women to know their rage is sacred, that it doesn't make them ugly, that it doesn't make them hysterical, that it means they remember, that it means they survived, that it means something in them refused to die. I lived too long inside someone else's silence. Now I live inside my own roar. I wear my truth like armor, not because I want to fight, but because I will never be defenseless again. They say, "You're brave." But bravery isn't what brought me here. What brought me here was grief and fury and love for the girl I was and for the woman I became in spite of him. Bravery came later. Bravery came the moment I decided that my story mattered more than my reputation, that my peace was worth more than their comfort, that my freedom was worth every bridge I had to burn to get it. And I did burn them, every single one. I stood in the smoke, coughing and shaking, and still I did not turn back, because there is nothing for me in the place where I was silent, only ghosts. And I've had enough of ghosts. Now I only walk forward, even if it's slow, even if it's painful, even if some days my legs tremble under the weight of memory. I walk, because behind me there are girls watching, girls who've never seen a woman speak without apology, girls who've never seen a survivor stand tall without shame, girls who are still learning that their voice is not a weapon turned against them, but a shield they've always had the right to raise. I speak for them now, for the 14-year-old girl hiding in the school bathroom, heart pounding in her ears, afraid she's pregnant and too ashamed to tell anyone, for the woman in her 40s who's never told her husband why she doesn't sleep through the night, for the grandmother who's carried her secret for 60 years and can no longer remember the man's face, but remembers his breath, his weight, his smell. For all of them, I will not stop. When I was young, I thought healing meant forgetting. That if I could just erase the memory, everything would be fine. But healing isn't forgetting. Healing is remembering without disappearing. It's walking back through the worst nights of your life, barefoot and shaking, and lighting a candle in each corner of the dark. It's standing in the same room where it happened and saying, "I am not that girl anymore. But I will never leave her behind." It's carrying her, not as a burden, but as a witness. I live with her every day. She shows up in the way I protect the young ones, in the way I trust my gut when something feels off, in the way I no longer apologize for taking up space. She walks beside me like a shadow, but she no longer drags me down. She is my beginning, and I am her end. Together, we are whole. There is no justice that can undo what was done, no sentence, no apology, no admission. Even if he had confessed, even if they had believed me the first time, even if he had served time, the pain still would have come. The silence still would have festered. The healing still would have taken decades. Justice is not what I live for. Truth is. Witnessing is. Naming is. There is power in saying, "He hurt me," and not lowering your voice. There is power in the way women gather, the way we pass our stories like lifelines, the way we nod without needing to explain. The way we reach across generations with shaking hands and say, "Me too, child. Me too. I don't need anyone's permission to speak anymore. I don't wait for the room to get quiet. I don't ask if it's the right time. I don't soften the edges of what happened so they'll find me more palatable. Because the truth isn't palatable. It's jagged. It's ugly. It's hard to hear. But it's mine. And I've earned it. Every woman who speaks truth into a world that rewards silence earns it. Every time I open my mouth, I feel her. The little girl with dirt under her nails and a scream stuck in her throat stand up inside me. And she is not afraid anymore, because she knows I've got her. I always did. I think that's what real healing looks like. Not a sudden transformation, not some tidy moment where everything makes sense and the pain vanishes, but a slow becoming, a return to the parts of yourself that were hidden, stolen, shamed into silence. A return not to who you were before, but to who you are, underneath all that was done to you. For a long time, I didn't think that version of me existed anymore. He didn't just touch me, he rearranged me, rewired the way I saw the world, the way I trusted people, the way I moved through rooms. I flinched when doors closed too quickly. I couldn't sleep with my back to the door. I couldn't stand the smell of certain colognes, couldn't bear certain music, couldn't feel safe in my own bed. And the worst part, I thought it was normal. No one told me it wasn't. No one told me that being afraid wasn't just part of growing up. That the way I froze when someone raised their voice wasn't just me being too sensitive. That my mistrust, my distance, my silence wasn't a flaw in my character. It was evidence. Evidence of what I survived, of what no one protected me from. The world gaslit me before I even knew the word. Don't make a scene. He didn't mean it like that. You're overreacting. He's just friendly. Don't ruin his life over a misunderstanding. But I remember everything. The way the air changed in the room when he walked in. The sound of his footsteps in the hallway. The way I'd calculate escape routes without knowing I was doing it. That's what trauma does. It teaches you to be ready at all times, even if you don't know why. I grew up thinking that love was a thing you had to earn with silence, that protection was something you only got if you didn't ask for it, that safety was a myth other people lived in. But I don't believe that anymore, because now I've held real love. I've stood in rooms where people told their stories and no one looked away. I've watched women rise from their knees, shaking and bleeding and broken, and still rise. And I've learned that there's a difference between surviving and living. Surviving is breath and heartbeat, and the quiet hope that no one will notice how much it hurts. Living is different. Living is walking into the fire of your own past and standing there, tall. It's naming the man who hurt you. It's weeping for the girl who was silenced. It's raising your children to scream if someone touches them wrong. It's sitting across from your granddaughter and saying, "If anyone ever makes you feel small, you tell me." Living is making space in your life for rage, for grief, for softness, for healing that doesn't have to be pretty or linear or polite. And it is worth it. All of it. Even the years I lost to shame. Even the friendships I lost when I spoke up. Even the nights I thought I wouldn't survive the weight of memory, because I did survive. I do survive. And more than that, I thrive. Not in spite of what happened, but because I refused to let it be the end of me. He wrote the first chapter, but I wrote the rest. With trembling hands, yes, but hands that never let go of the pen. And I kept writing. Even when no one wanted to read it. Even when the family said I was exaggerating. Even when they told me to let it go, to move on, to stop living in the past. What they didn't understand is this was my way of moving on. Not forgetting, not forgiving what was never acknowledged, but owning it. Writing was the only way I could breathe some days. And through it, I found other women I'd never met, never seen, who somehow knew exactly what it felt like to live with a body that had once been turned into a battlefield. Some of them were old like me. Some were still girls. All of them carried the same ache behind their eyes. And when we wrote to each other, or spoke, or simply sat together, It felt like something holy, not religious, but sacred. Because when survivors sit in a circle and tell the truth, something shifts in the air. The shame evaporates. The weight lifts. And for a moment, just a moment, we all get to be free. I've seen that happen in community centers, in church basements, in living rooms with peeling wallpaper, in courtrooms where truth fought tooth and nail just to be heard. I've held women while they sobbed into my shoulder. I've listened to stories that sounded like my own. And I've looked into eyes that asked the question we're all too afraid to say aloud. Will this pain ever end? And I always say the same thing, no. But it will change. It will stop being the thing that wakes you at night and starts becoming the thing that makes you speak. It will stop being a wound and start becoming a weapon. Not to hurt others, but to protect, to defend, to cut through the silence that allows this to keep happening. Because if there's one thing I know now, after all these years, it's this. Silence is how they win. And I won't give them that. Not now. Not ever. When I die, and that day is coming sooner than it used to feel, I don't want you to say I was strong. I don't want a eulogy that paints me as a saint. I don't want pity or praise or platitudes. I want you to tell the truth. Say I was broken. Say I was angry. Say I was loud when it mattered. Say I ruined the peace to tell the truth. Say I made people uncomfortable. Say I taught girls not to keep secrets that eat them alive. Say I left this world louder than I found it. Because that's the only legacy that matters. I've spent decades picking up the pieces of the girl I was. Now I wear them like armor. And I swear to you, I will never, ever be silent again. I think if I had stayed silent, I would have disappeared. Not literally. I would have still gone to work, still smiled in pictures, still wrapped presents at Christmas and stirred soup on the stove. I would have lived the life everyone expected, quiet, small, respectable. But inside, I would have vanished. Because silence doesn't just protect them, it erases us. Every time we bite our tongues, every time we say, it's fine, when it isn't. Every time we nod and smile and pretend it didn't happen, we give away a little piece of ourselves. And after enough time, there's nothing left but a hollow shell of the woman we might have been. I lived that way for years. I smiled through birthdays, kissed cheeks I didn't want to, dressed up pain in pretty clothes so no one would feel uncomfortable. I learned how to make people like me, how to seem fine, how to hide the storm under my skin so well that even I started to believe the lie. But it never left me. Not really. It waited in the quiet moments, in the sound of keys at the front door, in the sudden touch of a hand on my shoulder, in the way I'd stare at the ceiling at night, heart pounding for no reason I could name. I thought that was normal. I thought all women felt that way. I thought I was just weak. But I wasn't weak. I was wounded. And when I finally said it, really said it, out loud, without apology, it was like breathing for the first time. Do you know what it feels like to tell the truth after years of hiding? It feels like fire. Like you've been walking underwater your whole life and suddenly you burst through the surface gasping, desperate, alive. It feels like standing naked in a storm, letting the wind peel the shame off your bones. And you don't die. You don't die. The world keeps turning. The sky doesn't fall. The people who love you, really love you, they stay. And the ones who leave, let them. Let them walk away, because your truth was never meant to fit in the quiet rooms they live in. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't owe anyone your comfort. What you owe to yourself, to the girl you were, to the one still living in the dark, is honesty. That's all. Not perfection, not healing wrapped in a bow, not closure, just truth. The raw, cracked, trembling kind, because that's where it starts. The moment you say, it happened, and I didn't deserve it. The moment you say, I survived, but it changed me. The moment you say, I'm still angry, and that's okay. That's the seed, and from there, if you water it with tears, with rage, with breath, it will grow into strength, into story, into something too rooted to be torn out again. I am old now. My hands shake when I write, my spine bends, my voice cracks, but I have never stood taller, because I stand on the truth, and it holds me. There were years, entire decades, when I thought I'd carry this alone until the end, that no one would ever really want to hear it, that my pain was too heavy, too messy, too inconvenient to put into anyone else's hands. I thought the world didn't care, and maybe back then, it didn't. Back then, a girl like me was taught to disappear, not with a scream, but with a smile, not with force, but with silence. We weren't told, be safe. We were told, be nice. As if being nice could save us. As if kindness could protect us from hands that didn't know the meaning of no. I tried to be nice. I tried so hard to be the good girl, the quiet girl, the one who didn't make things difficult. And I paid for it, with my voice, with my body, with my peace. But the world has changed, a little, not enough, but enough to matter. Now when I speak, people listen, not all of them, not always, but enough to keep going. I've met women who told me they never said a word for 50 years, until one day they heard me speak, and something broke open inside them. I've met mothers who started asking their daughters different questions. Fathers who cried for the first time when they realized what their daughter had survived and they hadn't seen it. I've seen healing pass like a torch from hand to hand. And I know now truth doesn't just liberate the one who tells it. It ripples. It travels. It makes space where there was none before. And slowly, it builds a world where maybe the next girl won't have to carry it alone. That's all I ever wanted. Not revenge, not pity, just a world where a girl can say, he hurt me, and no one asks what she was wearing. A world where women can be angry without being called hysterical, where we can be broken without being discarded, where we can be loud and soft and scared and strong, sometimes all in the same day, and still be believed. I want that world. Even if I never live to see it, I want it for them, for my granddaughters, for the daughters they'll one day raise, for every girl who will never know what it cost us to give her a world where her story matters. That's the legacy I care about. Not forgiveness, not forgetting, but freedom. And freedom, I've learned, doesn't always feel like joy. Sometimes it feels like shaking in a courtroom. Sometimes it feels like standing at a family dinner and saying the one thing no one wants to hear. Sometimes it feels like losing people you loved because they couldn't handle the truth of who you really are. But it's worth it. Every tremble, every tear, every lonely night, because I know who I am now. Not what they called me. Not what he made me feel like. Not the girl who stayed quiet. Not the woman who almost disappeared. I am the storm that silence created, and I will not be washed away. So this is how it ends. Not with silence, not with shame, but with truth standing tall beside me, like an old friend I finally stopped running from. I look back now, not in regret, but in reckoning. I see the girl I was, knee scraped, voice stolen, trying so hard to be small, to be good, to be safe. And I see her now, rebuilt from ash and memory, standing in the light of her own name, unafraid. I see every woman I've ever met who carried the same wound, shaped differently, but just as deep. I see them choosing to speak, to rise, to live, when the world told them it would be easier not to. I see a future that isn't perfect but possible. A future where our daughters don't flinch when someone raises their voice. Where our sons are taught that consent is sacred and strength isn't silence. Where the word victim is never whispered like a curse. Where healing isn't demanded on a deadline and grief is honored, not hidden. I know I won't live to see it fully, but I've carved out a piece of it right here in this body, in these words, in this unbreakable truth that I refuse to bury. I was hurt, but I am not ruined. I was broken, but I am not gone. I lived fully, fiercely, loudly, and that is enough. So when they speak of me, let them say, she did not ask for it. She did not stay quiet. She did not shrink. She turned her pain into a lantern and lit the path for those still finding their way home.